Hey guys, so I hope you are all well. Welcome back to my channel. This is, the first month that we're in 2024, but I thought we'd take it back and have a recap of 2023. I know it seems like a few weeks ago now that we're in 2023, but I do have one more video which is related to 2023 that I wanted to film. And that is where I go through all of my reading stats for 2023. So if you guys don't know, if you're new here, I do really like to read, and I do often do things like reading vlogs and book shopping videos and things like that. So I thought I'd give you guys an insight into what I actually read from those books, from those TBRs, whatever, and from my big bookshelf. I thought I'd give you sort of an insight into what I actually read. So in this video we're going to be looking through Storygraph, which is a app which you can use to track your reading. It's very similar to Goodreads. People say it's a Goodreads alternative and things like that. So this video is inspired by Jack Edwards. I know he's done a video like this in the past. And yeah, so I thought I'd do one myself so you guys can see what sort of books I read, because I don't read a lot, but it still gives you an insight into what things I sort of like, and it's always a good way to get to know me better as well. So if you haven't already, subscribe and we'll get straight into it. So we're gonna do my reading wrap up sort of. So the first thing is that my reading goal was to read 25 books. I did not read 25 books. And that's already quite a low amount, like to me at least. I know that people read so many more books within like the hundreds, but I only read 25. Like that was my goal, and I only actually managed to read 14 books. I was so close to getting 15. I really wanted to like meet the 15, but I actually finished that book on like the first day or so of January, so it doesn't include in my 2023 sort of like books that I've read. So like I say, I didn't meet my reading goal. I'm not too bothered. I've just had so much going on this year that I've just not really picked up books very much, but I'm hoping this year that I'll have a lot more time. I'm already like really enjoying the book that I'm currently reading for this year, and yeah, I'm just really excited. So let's get into it anyway. So the first thing is that I've read 5,910 pages, which sounds crazy to me when I think about it. Like 5,000 pages, 5,000 pieces of paper I've read. That's just mad to me. So the first thing that Storygraph has on these statistics is the moods that you read. So this isn't genres as such, it's sort of what mood that book puts you in while you're reading it. Do you feel, is it quite an emotional read, or is it quite hopeful? Do you feel like, this is actually quite a nice light-hearted book, or does it like make you reflect more on the world or on yourself? Those are sort of what moods mean. They're not necessarily like genres, but we will get into genres later on. So for my moods, I'm not really too sure what sort of things I'm reading. I think I read more darker books this year compared to last year. I think I read a lot more like light-hearted books, especially because this year I started off by reading Room by Emma Donoghue, which is a thriller, and I've also read a couple more since. So I definitely think dark might be the mood that I'm reading quite a bit of for this year. Well, for last year technically now. So let's see what the moods are. I'll put it on the screen so you can see. So my moods are, oh, actually this is quite opposite to what I thought it'd be. I didn't think I read that many light-hearted books this year. But my first major mood, as you can see, I read quite a few moods actually. Like, I'm not really specific to certain few, but the most I've read is emotional. I do like an emotional read. I like really feeling for the characters, so Room probably was an emotional read as much as it was probably a little bit dark. And yeah, so that's that. Then I've got light-hearted and funny. I was not expecting funny, so let's see what funny was about. So we have Laura Olympus, which is funny actually. Soulmate Equation, interesting. The Fine Print, yeah, I'd say that's funny. Mile High was funny as well. What else do we have? So they're all actually romances from this. They're all like romance themed books. So yeah, so that's interesting. And I also have, what else? The least one that I read the most of is hopeful and adventurous. I don't really read many books that, like, I don't know how you describe hopeful. Like, are you hopeful for the characters or are you hopeful for the story? I don't really know. And adventurous, I don't really read many adventurous books in terms of, like, I do like fantasy books, which I would class as adventurous, but I haven't read that many this year. And in terms of, like, you know, sci-fi, I don't really read things like that. So I don't know, or even just books that, like, take you on a massive journey. I don't really think I read many of those, so that probably is true. So if we move on from our moods, then let's go down to pace. So this is split into slow, medium and fast, so it depends on how fast people typically read the book, how fast does the plot grow, like how fast are you likely to finish this book. That's how I see it anyway. So I don't really like slow paced books. I like to feel like I'm constantly moving within the book, so I prefer more medium to fast paced books. I think I will have read more medium just because it's slap bang in the middle. It's the average option out of the three, so I think it probably will be medium that's like my most read, but we shall see. So our pace is, yep, it's definitely medium. So with medium I read 64% of medium paced books, and the least paced ones that I read, I guess, were my slow paced books, which was 14%. So that's obviously a massive amount lower than 64%. That's nearly 50% lower than medium percent. So yeah, basically how I said it. Fast, again, I do like fast paced books, so I can see that why that's a little bit higher than the slow pace. But you know, it's taking up quite a lot of space, is the medium, in how fast I sort of read. So that's our pace. Next is page number. So this is like how many pages in the book that you've read. Like, do you read books that are like under 300 pages? Do you read like 300 to 400? Or do you read like above 500 maybe? Page number is, yeah, like I said, between 300 and 499 books. I feel like a lot of books are that length anyway, so there wouldn't be that many that were, you know, out of that. But I'm actually shocked that I read more books with 500 pages than I did books under 300. That really shocks me. I thought I would have read more shorter reads. So let's see what books were actually above 500. And it is Powerless and Mile High, just like I said it would be. And yes, oh, Mile High actually has 603 pages. I don't think it had that many pages on my Kindle, because I read it on Kindle. But yeah, so that is Mile High and Powerless, which I sort of expected. Now we move on to fiction. I know already that I didn't read any really non-fiction. I tried reading a book about film and the genre of film noir, but I didn't actually end up finishing it. It was a lot of information and I just didn't want to read it at the time, I don't think, but I'm willing to go back to that in the future. So I know that I definitely don't actually even think I've got that many non-fiction books on my shelf. Like, I think I only have one shelf out of the bookcase that is actually just non-fiction, and a lot of them are actually John's books, so I don't even go near them. So a lot of mine are fiction anyway, so that like sort of aligns. So yeah, I've not read any non-fiction books this year. Next year I want to read a couple of memoirs, because I know that a lot of people have been really enjoying those recently. So like Matthew Perry's, you know, Jeanette McCurdy's, those sort of books I do want to look into. But yeah, we will just see how this year goes. So that's non-fiction. Finally, we have our genres. So these are the books that we actually read. So in terms of, like, do we read romance? Did we read classics? What were it that we're sort of reading? I already know that it is romance because of the fact that I know I read a lot of romance. I'd say typically my main genres are romance, classics and fantasies. I do quite like a dystopian fantasy as well. In terms of, like, the subplot of fantasy, they are, like, my favourite. But yeah, so let's see which books, like what sort of books we read this year. So my top genre, I read 10 out of the 14 books. I read 10 romances, or 10 books within romance category. So some of these weren't marketed as romances. So for example, Rebecca, I read this year, it is a classic, however it is a romance as well as romance within it. It's also a thriller sort of book, think of it like that. So yeah, definitely knew that romance would be in there, and I knew that it would be a big one. My next biggest one is contemporary, so I definitely have a lot of contemporary books on my shelf, so again I can see that. And the lowest book that I read, the lowest sort of genre, was graphic novel. I only read one this year, which was Lore Olympus, which is on Webtoon, or you can actually get the books, I think, which I am wanting to do because I would like them on my shelves. Really love that series. I'm obsessed. I literally watch every episode when it comes out. I love it so much. Definitely check it out if you're into like Greek mythology. It's really interesting to learn about Greek gods and goddesses and that sort of mythology side of it through a graphic novel, because it's not too much to take in, you can understand the story, and it also has a lot of like funny moments in it as well. It just makes it so much more easy to digest, and I really enjoy it. Honestly, like, I rated it 5 stars. Like, it is one of my favourites. Like, I've liked this for so many years. So yeah, that was the one that I read. So I have sports on here, which really shocks me. Let me just see what it was. I might not be shocked when I see it. Mile High. I wouldn't class it as a book about sports. I mean, it is a hockey romance, but I would not class that as sports. So I don't know, like, whether I agree with that completely, but yeah. So that is our genres. Again, we do have the ones like fantasies, thrillers, literary classics. So I do read those. Obviously the ones that aren't there are the ones that I probably don't read that much. But yeah, the books that I've read this year, a lot of them have been really good and I have really enjoyed them. We'll see when we have the ratings. I think I only DNF'd 2 books, or 3 books if we're including film noir. So that's actually really good for me because I don't really DNF books in general. So the fact that I actually just bit the bullet and was like, you know what, I actually don't enjoy this book, I'm not enjoying it, let me just put it down, and if I want to come back to it another time I will. So the next one is format. Now I don't think this has a massively important, because I read some books on my Kindle and some books actually as a physical book, and I don't really touch this really, so I'm going to skip this one because it's not really what I look at. So my most read authors, now I don't think I read any authors twice, so I don't think this is going to have like any, yeah. No author that features more than one in this time period. I don't really look at that at all. I never really read more than one author within 1 year because I don't read that many books in general. I don't usually pick up the same books by the same authors, but we shall see this year whether I actually read more than one book from the same author. So hopefully we can have a different one. Next is languages. Again, all the books in this time period are within English. Some have been translated. So for example, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I did read that this year and it is translated. I think it's originally Japanese, and it was obviously put into English. So I do read translated fiction. I just don't read books in another language because I don't actually know any other languages to an extent that I could read a book in that language. So finally, it's just the number of books and, oh no, actually not finally because we've got the ratings. The next section is number of books and pages. So like I said, I've read 14 books and 5,910 pages. And we can see on here sort of when I dipped and didn't read anything, and when I read a lot of books. So there was a couple of times, so I know that in April, I think, June and August I read 2 books, so that was really great. And then in terms of pages, the most pages I've read is just underneath the 800 pages mark, which is mad. Imagine reading 800 pages in a book, I mean in a month, sorry. Like, if you got given a document that was 800 pages long, would you sit there and read it? I don't think so. So yeah, that's absolutely mad. I'm really shocked about that. So yeah, so my average rating was obviously 4.34. It's crazy that we're now having to go back to being right at the beginning again, and I've not read any books so far, and I have to start all over again to get to the end and see my book stats. Like, I can't believe we're gonna have to wait another year to see what I actually read in that year. But yeah, so that's 4.34 stars, and I think that's actually quite high for me to say that I DLF'd 3 books this year. And I also didn't, so technically if we count those 3 and I read like, let's say half of those, I technically read 3 more books. I technically read 17 books, but we're not counting them because I didn't finish them. But I did get quite a way into them before deciding, nah, this isn't for me. So yeah, so my average rating was that. So I rated 4 books out of the total of 14 books. I rated them 5 stars. So that's really good that I've had 4 5-star reads. Like, what the hell, like, that is madness. Like, when I think about it, I don't think, oh my god, I've had 4 5-star reads added to my like ultimate favourites. And it's really interesting that I know that this year one of my goals for my reading is to try and reread some of those 5-star reads from previous years. So I'm going to try reading a couple that were my favourites and see whether they're still my favourites. But yeah, 5 stars, that was 4. And the lowest amount that I've rated something this year is 3 stars, because usually if it's anything lower than 3 stars I will have not finished it. So that's usually why there's nothing below 3 stars. But yeah, my most rated rating, I guess, which was 5 books, was 4.5 stars. So yeah, so I hope you guys really enjoyed seeing, you know, my book stacks and see what I sort of read on a yearly basis. It's really interesting to see how it changes over the years. I can now look back at 2022 and see how my reading's changed. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit shorter and a bit of a different video, but a bit more of a chatty sit down video. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to give a like. Comment, tell me how many books you read this year and your top favourites. I'd love some more recommendations. So if you have any more books that you really enjoyed, put them in the comments and I will try and read them. I also have my Amazon wishlist, so if you want to send me any books that you really loved this year, then feel free and I'll read them within this year. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in next Thursday's video. Bye guys!